Hey, Michael here. Welcome to another Acquisitions Anonymous. We have a classic style episode for you today. We had a guest come in, our new buddy, Peter Wirtshafter, who is a New Yorker, well, Clevelander, turned into New Yorker, now living in Denver, and is out doing a search for a business to buy. And he brought us two deals. So he wins Guest of the Week. For helping us bring two deals that we went through, one of which we loved, which was a dog teeth cleaning business, and one of which we thought was way overpriced, which was a Radon business. So Peter was super cool because he brought in a salesperson's lens to all this stuff. And we've seen that with a few other searchers who come in, not from the finance side, but come in from the sales side. And it was really interesting to just see how he thinks about deals vis-a-vis growth and vis-a-vis his strengths and weaknesses and all that stuff. So really enjoyed this time with Peter. I think you'll enjoy it too. Had a ton of fun talking about these deals, and we'll get right into the episode after a quick word from our sponsor. Hey, Michael here. Want to talk to you about today's sponsor for the episode, which is CloudBookkeeping.com. So Cloud Bookkeeping is actually run by my neighbor, Charlie. So I've met him in person and can attest that he's a real human being and a good person. And what Cloud Bookkeeping does is offer a full suite of bookkeeping services, all in the cloud. For you around QuickBooks and other technologies that you're using as a small business owner. So if you're interested in getting the bookkeeping part of running a business off of your plate and focusing on running your business, Charlie and his team are one to call. They can put together a bunch of other stuff in terms of helping you manage and grow your business besides just bookkeeping, sophisticated reporting, definitely helping you get your QuickBooks online set up in the right way, and a number of things around payroll as well. So definitely know them and recommend them. If you want to find out more about cloud bookkeeping, you can go to their website at cloudbookkeeping.com. Reach out to Charlie. I know many of you have, and see if he can help you make your running your business easier and more fun by letting them help with a lot of the bookkeeping solutions. So, and when you call, mention this podcast. It would help us and help Charlie know that we're supporting him as well. So thanks a bunch, and cloudbookkeeping.com as the sponsor for today's episode. Peter, we are so excited to have you today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to be on.
Yeah, well, it's cool because we went out on Twitter and we wanted to do an episode that was very, sales centric. Well, for
Huge jump.
those members of our audience that don't know you, we'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us the Peter story.
Yeah. I spent the last 12 years or so building, leading, and scaling large sales and operations teams at high growth companies. So the first half of my career was in B2B SaaS. The second half of my career, more in the B2C services space. Spent a few years at a clean energy startup leading a sales team there. I guess it's not a startup anymore. They just got acquired by Shell a couple months ago. And then more recently was at HelloFresh, where I led the sales and sales operations teams there here in the U.S., which was about when I joined 150 plus people. We grew it up to close to 400 before having to restructure that due to COVID. I ended up leaving. I was excited about searching for a business to acquire and ended up leaving to do a self-funded search while also focusing on my growth consulting and advisory work I'd been doing. And yeah, that's how I got introduced to your podcast. I don't have a background in private equity or investment banking, no MBA here. And so the process of acquiring a small business was completely foreign to me. I'd been a part of a number of venture raises, and there's virtually no overlap. And so a lot of the learnings came from Twitter and people like Mills and this podcast and people in my network. So it's been a really awesome experience. Learning how a micro private equity or a PE fund would go about searching for a company, analyzing and going through diligence. I got probably 8 months into it, was about 6 days away from closing on a business in Chicago. At the time, my wife and I were in New York City. We were planning to move out there. It was a $2.5 million home services business. And about 6 days before, we identified some seller fraud in the business that completely derailed the entire thing. And at that time, we took a step back and said, let's pretty set on leaving New York still. So let's head out to Denver. So we moved out here about 4 months ago. I spend most of my time consulting through my company, Sunbeam Growth Advisory, mainly working with small businesses, much like the ones that I'm looking to acquire, as well as early stage tech companies. I just described it yesterday as a quarter sales consulting, a quarter management consulting, a quarter executive coaching, and a quarter therapist. And some of those, sometimes just a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, well, I feel like our podcast is that sometimes. So we'll see how today goes. Good news is we're batting 1,000. No guests have cried yet, so we'll keep going. Um, so as you think about, you're a relatively unique beast in terms of people, from my experience, making the transition from the corporate world to trying to own a business and do entrepreneurship through acquisition, in that you have a sales background. I think we tend to see people who come much more often from the finance background. Like Guesswork Investing was a guest that we had who was a search funder that comes from the finance background. And obviously classical MBAs are that way. You're coming at it from an entirely different set of strengths and weaknesses. How has that kind of changed how you're thinking about doing this versus some of those guys and gals who are private equity or finance folks as a background?
Yeah, it's funny because Guestwork, I won't reveal his real name just in case he's still going anonymous. And I used to meet up in New York when we were there, along with a number of other searchers. I have wanted to own and operate a small business for a long time. I have a number of mentors and people in my network that have had a lot of success doing this. I've been fortunate enough to gain a lot of experience in the operating room. I sat on the senior leadership team at HelloFresh in the U.S., which is a $14 billion company. Prior to that, had the opportunity to build and lead fairly large teams cross-functionally in a number of different industries. And so that gave me the at least slight confidence and competence to feel comfortable in the room, building teams, growing revenue, implementing process and changing technology. Where I, again, had absolutely no experience was, where the hell do these deals even live? How do I find them? How do I analyze them? I didn't even know what an SBA loan was when I started this process. And so, I go back to going out to, lunch with Guestwork. The way that most of these people with MBAs and coming out of Harvard, HBS and private equity firms, I felt like I had where they're front loaded in the process of really highly technical and analyzing deals, running numbers that I don't even know exist. I felt much more competent in the actual room, and so I've kind of looked at it as I have to earn the right to get there by learning from all of them on how to successfully acquire a company. I think what's given me a little bit of confidence is just, I've been in the room. I've hired 500 plus people in my life. I've restructured entire departments. I've grown, revenue from 0 to 100 million plus. I've been fortunate enough to just see a lot and make a ton of mistakes. I was confident, or I'm somewhat confident, that I can figure out the rest as I go.
Yeah, totally dig it. And as you think about, in your consulting work or in kind of these businesses that you're looking at, what would you lay out as, like, is there a common thread of mistakes you're seeing kind of around go-to-market and sales that comes up over and over again, or are the problems really different?
I'd say the problem's very different. I'm happy to walk through how I approach like my sales diligence in a company. When I'm talking to them, there's a ton of things that I look at and things that I'm looking for. But it really just runs the gamut. Depends on the size and stage of the company. The companies I'm looking at are about 300,000 to $1.5 million in SDE. The primary focus is on companies with non-existent or limited sales and revenue functions. So I'm looking where I can take, again, my experience in building teams and growing revenue and apply value that way. The companies I've spoken to, there are some that are doing a great job here, and there are some that I can't believe they're still in business. So it's tough to say if there's a specific thing. I'd say if there was one that stands out, it's a lack of process and a lack of having a sales process and evolving that process. So a lot of times the sales process has been the same thing it was 10 years ago, and it's just the owner networking in the community. Or they brought in someone to do an event with the sales team 3 years ago, and they're all using that script from the sales guru. But yeah, it really runs the gamut.
Yeah, totally dig it. Well, cool. Well, I think we would love to talk about, getting to our first deal now because, and look at those from a sales lens, because I think it's going to be really interesting for me and the audience. I don't have a sales background, right? I have a product management and engineering background. So it'll be really cool to see the lens at which you look at these. So if that works, Mills has our first deal this week, which is we're doing the dog services one, right?
Yep. Peter, glad you're here, man. I've always enjoyed our conversations in the past, and you always teach me things about sales. So, my impression of anything pet related or pet service related is that the sales do themselves. I know that's not always actually true, but that's at least what's advertised from the people who are trying to sell them. So, we have this one up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but this is Transworld. They're actually a franchise business broker, and a lot of the Transworld brokers I've worked with in the past have sold businesses of some sort, and they're like, "Hey, that went pretty well. Maybe I'll sign up as a franchisee and help people do this." So this one is Transworld. It's a dog service business for sale. It says lender pre-qualified, which we could talk more about, and we have talked about a little bit in the past with the SBA folks that we have had on. But it says it's an established business that offers pet teeth cleaning services via remote clinics at pet supply stores, kennels, daycares, and other pet-related businesses. The business has been in operation for 20 years, built a strong reputation and customer pipeline to ensure future revenue and growth. They require veterinarian oversight at the remote clinics, and they have tenured staff in place. The business has been lender pre-qualified, which means you could own a business cash flowing over $340,000 for only 10% down. The current owners are willing to help with the transition, and partial seller financing is available to a well-qualified buyer. Inquire for more details and learn how you can own a business for as little as 10% down on qualified SBA listings, or how to use creative financing options to get a deal done! At Transworld Business Advisors, most active business broker in the country, I have yet to hear a business broker who hasn't told me they're the biggest or the most active or the most listings or whatever. So the price is not, we don't have a ton of information here, but the price is $945,000. The SDE, the seller's discretionary earnings, is $340,650. They say that their total sales, top line revenue, is $836,000. They're in Denver County. They don't have any inventory. They have very, very minimal $3,000 of furniture, fixture, and equipment, FF&E, 8 employees, and the owner wants to retire. That's what we've got on this one. Kind of interesting. So they focus on, it sounds like, and Peter, you may know more about this one. Does this business only do pet teeth cleaning? They're not doing like, I don't know, spay and neutering. They're not doing dog grooming. It's just pet teeth.
Yeah.
I like it.
I didn't know it existed. I didn't know something like this existed.
Yeah. So why? I have a question from the listing. Why do you have to be supervised by a veterinarian to brush a dog's teeth? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand that part. Is there something that they're doing more than just like teeth cleaning, or is it like,
no, I think
what's going on here?
My take is that it's somewhat of a regulated industry.
Okay.
And so I think it's different state by state. I don't know the limitations there. And I think that's, to me, like one of the biggest downsides here is that you do need a veterinarian oversight. So, what does that mean from hiring challenges right now? But I can't answer that fully. I don't know.
So do we think a veterinarian has to own this, or do we think that when you place your people in the veterinarian clinics, the vet there will supervise your people and make sure they're not doing it the wrong way?
Yeah, I don't think you need to be a veterinarian to own this. My take is that they have vet techs who can be anyone as long as they're trained, who are going out to these clinics. And these clinics, this is one of the things that I think is really fascinating about this, is that they kind of have this channel partner acquisition strategy. So they partner with daycares and kennels and dog stores to get access to their clients and customers. And I love that. Whether I'm working with a client or I'm looking at an acquisition, I'm always asking, what relationships can I build that lead to multiple customers and clients in the long run? I think they're doing an awesome job there. But I think the veterinarian just needs to be on site in case something goes wrong. Maybe in case it's a deeper issue than just teeth cleaning. That's my read on it.
Peter, on this business, are they setting up? It seems like they're doing like almost pop up shops, to use a very
Yeah.
cliche term, at these places.
Yeah.
It's not that the pet supply store says, "Hey, we're handing out your business card," and then they have to go to those people's houses and track them down and close them. It's like, hey, in the same way that you may be able to show up and all your dogs get their heartworm medication or their shots or something.
Bingo.
Like, bring your dog. We're going to do teeth cleaning on site, so it's kind of an amenity maybe for these people. The daycares and the kennels and everything to have these folks come out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Which again goes back to that channel sales acquisition. These companies, these daycares, these walkers have incredible credibility and trust they've already built, and they're always looking to add more value to their customers. And so if you can create one relationship with a daycare that brings 20 dogs to one of these clinics, I think that's a great deal of leverage that you have. But yeah, that's, I believe, how it is. It's these pop-up clinics where their approach is not to put the dog under anesthesia and to do this different approach to cleaning and keeping a dog's mouth healthy.
Is there specific equipment that is required for this? They don't list, any inventory, obviously, or FF&E, but are there like special machines? Is there like Sonicare for dogs, or Sonicare for cats, or I don't know, rabbits or something like that?
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
I'm looking at the FF&E numbers, but no, I don't think that's the case.
So I'm just thinking, then your competitive advantage and your moat in this is not like we have the exclusive rights to use this special toothbrush that nobody else can use in, Denver County. It's just that, we have a relationship with the pet stores, and, sure, somebody could come in and try and compete that away. But if you could have enough ability to fulfill, there's certain contractors or on-site service providers that win. I know a guy who they do a ton of interior renovation work for like Lowe's and Sherwin-Williams. And the only reason they win jobs, it's not because they're the low bid. It's because they are like, we'll handle everything on the East Coast. Every Lowe's that needs a new customer service kiosk, or, where you do the returns, we'll do all those, and we can do it while the store is still open. And they can beat out other local contractors because that guy's like, I don't know how to price 250 of these. I can only do one at a time. I'm wondering about that dynamic in this business where, theoretically a mom and pop, pet store, they could have anybody come in and do dog teeth cleaning. Maybe part of their strength is this is a lot of teeth to be brushed, to do $836,000 in sales. Any idea what the average price point is? Is this like a $5 thing, a $25 thing? I don't even have a frame of reference.
I think it's probably like 250 to 400 is my guess on basic Googling. I think the advantage they have here is the typical process right now. So you would go to a vet, the dog's put under. It's a big process to clean teeth. I just got a bill yesterday, actually, or an estimate for our dog. It's like $1,200 to do that. And I think this is just a much less invasive, quicker, and cheaper way to do it more regularly, get out in front of any, maintenance issues or things that could come up. I think that's their competitive advantage. I also think there is training, a significant amount of training that needs to be done to be a tech here.
It is interesting that it looks like some of the bigger chains are kind of charging just what you talked about. I Googled this, Peter. It's $300 to $700 for a dog teeth cleaning and that the internet recommends it happens once per year. So, you can always trust what you read on the internet. Done without anesthesia and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. Some of the bigger clinics like VCA, Veterinary Clinics of America, which is actually Mills. I don't know if you knew this, but have you seen the VCA chains of of animal care clinics, of vets?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen
actually
some of
owned by
them.
the Mars Corporation. The Mars family owns it.
I know the previous owner. I'm
Yeah.
friends with his son. That's a hell of an ETA story
Hell of a roll up, and then they exited to those guys for
for
big money, I
a
assume.
decent amount of money.
So this looks like the niche smells like it's actually smaller vets who want to offer this as a service, but probably don't have enough volume to justify going through all the overhead worth of it. Is that kind of your read on this one, Peter?
Yeah, as well as I think again like daycares,
Yeah.
dog stores, dog walkers. Especially out here in Denver, the tailwinds are astronomical. There's so much population growth, and if you walk down the street, it appears that if you don't have a dog, something's drastically gone wrong in your life. And so, to me, I think the biggest, some of the challenges in this are that there's a huge education component for your consumer. I still think,
Yeah.
I've had dogs my whole life. I haven't spent much time thinking about their teeth until recently when my dog had some teeth issues. So I still think it's probably early in the education of this is something that needs to be done on a once a year basis if Google is correct, and or is it even necessary? How
Right.
recession resistant is this? Do I need to get this down, or is it a nice to have?
Yeah.
But I think through education, properly educating, partnering with these channel partners, I do think there's an easy way to explain how this is a very viable preventative measure. The things I love about this are, the margins are fantastic. 340K SDE on, what is it, 836 in revenues. That's 40% an SDE margin. I love the industry mainly because I love dogs, as well as I generally think that people are willing to spend on their dogs before themselves.
Yeah.
I love that it's been around 20 years. It shows sustainability in the model. Again, the thing that it gets me most excited is the sales and growth aspect. So as you think about how they're selling or meeting their customers right now, it's through that channel partnership. And that's really easy to kind of create this playbook of here's how we create a relationship. Here's how we schedule that. Here's how we communicate that. Here's how we pop up on a daily basis. And here's how we follow up on that. And if they've proven they can do that in one metro in Denver, I see no reason why you can't expand up the Front Range or expand into other states even with a very similar playbook. I think that to me is what gets me most excited about this is the ability to just replicate what's happening there over and over again.
Yeah. So that would be kind of your growth thesis on this deal of how it seems like perfect for somebody of your skill set who has that kind of business development and sales aspect to them. So as you think about this deal, so that's how we can grow it. You think? I mean, just best definitely, as Bill would say, kind of buyer deal fit here for you, right? This is like relationships, opening doors, doing that at scale. All that sounds right in your wheelhouse. How do you think about the operational side of this deal? Because that seems like the other part, right? You got to get good at recruiting these techs. You got to deliver it. You got to make sure that the vets are very happy because you're, as I understand it, you're subletting space in these doggy daycares and stuff. So it's very easy for them to get mad and kick you out relatively easily if they're not happy. And they have all the control of the customer as well. So how do you think about kind of doing well on the operational side for, with somebody of your kind of skill set and background?
Yeah, I think it's a very logistically heavy business. When I was at HelloFresh, I had 19 offices across the U.S. all doing events like this on a daily basis. So 300 plus people in the field on a daily basis, and a booth in the front of a Target, a Walmart, a gym, a farmer's market. And I can tell you right now, there's no perfect solution to transporting tables and tents and the logistical nightmares of being in the field on a daily basis. I think that can be solved by having good processes, documentation. But yeah, that's the biggest headache here. The building of the relationships, that's easy. Showing up on a daily basis and running a good clinic that's a good customer experience that is timely, that's a challenge. I think that the second biggest challenge is the hiring, in particularly if you need a veterinarian to stand there and be oversight. That's difficult. I do see an opportunity to say, this is an additional way for you to make money. This isn't full time. Maybe you get a host of veterinarians who want to work on the weekends. So I do like that. But yeah, you need to get really good at hiring. You need to have a really strong training program to be able to take anyone off the street who's interested in dogs and wants to build a career there and train them on how to be an effective tech. But yeah, that would be the big scary things for me here.
Yeah. So it sounds like risks as you see them are, operational risks for sure. Kind of as you kind of think through those, what are 1, 2, or 3, that come to mind in terms of, first of all, how do you not lose your shirt on this? And then it sounds like you have a plan to grow it, but how do you think about downside protection, for you to make sure that this goes right? It sounds like the operational thing is a big focus. Anything else come to mind?
I think having the veterinarian bench to be able to grow is probably the biggest challenge. I think as well, and I don't know enough about the need for this on an ongoing basis. How necessary is this? And then again, regulatory environment scares me a little. It flirts with the regulated environment, and that could present limitations. It could help in the future. I don't know. The sales and growth component to me is great. It sounds like they've done this for 20 years here in Denver, and there's no reason that you can't create process and a playbook to be able to replicate that. I think the education component would be fantastic to be able to market with them and share the need for why this is important. But yeah, the 3 biggest things would be the hiring of the staff, the logistical complexity of having this in multiple states, and then just again, how recession resistant is something like this? I don't know. How do you view it? What would you guys see as the biggest risks?
Well, I guess the question that comes to mind for me is, as somebody who this is the first deal that you're doing, you probably have a little bit of a fallback where, you could buy this business and theoretically continue to do some consulting and things like that, if you needed to, right? If you needed a safety net or wanted to keep it in place. I'm just wondering, how do you kind of underwrite and anticipate, what if you buy this business and it doesn't grow? Where does that kind of fit in your framework for thinking about it? Is it like, hey, it'll be fine, I'm okay if I own this thing, kind of as a quasi owner operator? Or are you like, this would be an absolute utter failure if I'm not in 5 states in 3 years? I'm always fascinated by how somebody defines success, because to one person, you could buy this business and maintain the status quo and it would be very successful.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know the answer. I haven't thought about it that well. To me, what I'm looking for are I'm on the younger side. I have a wife with a good career. I can take some risk, and so the opportunities I look at are those companies and are those cultures that have the ability to 3-5x over the next 5 years. So that's what success looks like for me. However, the numbers here are great. 40% SDE margin is healthy enough to be able to say, and what it's 945 price, so it's 2.5x multiple. You could maintain this with no growth, even have some downside, and still have a decent dollar coming your way after servicing the debt. So yeah, for me personally, I would want to grow this. I'm not super interested in companies that don't have that upside.
Yeah. It sounds like financially you'd be 100% okay if it stays flat and continues like it is, and it'd be a home run at 2.5 times SDE. Emotionally,
Yeah.
It sounds like you'd be hugely disappointed, which I think are both totally valid. Totally dig them.
Yeah, I think those aren't mutually exclusive. But yeah, again, 340K SDE and 2.7x. Yeah, you have some wiggle room, even if things go down. There's no customer concentration, I imagine, which is nice. Something really drastic would have to happen, probably on like a macro front, or I would need to get put in a bind with staffing. If that's the biggest risk. and would probably want to write that into the deal structure around maintaining the existing veterinarians that they have. Otherwise, that could become an issue quickly.
Yeah. So this is my first time talking to you. I know you and Mills have talked. You come across as very sharp, savvy, and capable.
You don't
So
know me
this is
well
going to
enough, I
be,
promise.
this question will be both an insult and a compliment. So you can see how this goes. Anyway, so I think my question is around, how do you think about this vis-a-vis opportunity cost, which is there is a chance here that you get stuck being an owner operator of this. And frankly, based on my impression of you so far, a business of this relative size is potentially kind of below your skill set, right? And if you're going to be doing an SBA loan, or maybe, there's other things available to you, both internal financials or outside, why not set your criteria a little higher, right? Should you be looking at $1 million SDE deal? Because it's still a deal, right? So how do you think about this size relative to your risk appetite and your skill set and your, how you feel about it? So anyway, I hope you feel both complimented and insulted. So
You sound, yeah, it's, I don't know. It's that's been like one of the biggest challenges when I started my search. Again, very naive and uninformed on how any of this works. I was looking at companies that were $1.5 million to $4 million in EBITDA, and very quickly learned that that's just not realistic with my capital structure, especially in an environment where private equity was coming, even below the million in EBITDA range at times. So I've significantly lowered my bar there, my parameters. I'm definitely more selective now. There was a point in time where, I left my job to go buy a business. And there were companies I was looking at that were not good companies, but God damn it, I said I was going to do it. I'm doing it. I've taken a much slower approach, partly because, I'm now only looking in Denver. There's less deal flow, but partly because I built up my growth advisory and consulting work to say I can take my time and be more selective. The opportunity cost here, I agree. I would ideally like to go larger, but at 2.5 or 2.7x here, I think it still is a decent, again, assuming 10% decline in numbers even. I think there's a decent path where you can do this for a year or two and hire yourself out of the business and either maintain it or put yourself in a position to grow it. So it's a good question. It's probably not a great answer. I try not to think about those things. I try and just think about, can I grow this? And I'll let someone on like Mills or friends of mine that I run these things by tell me where that's a horrible thesis.
yeah, well, I do think there's a natural evolution, and it's okay to go in like a little bit below your pay grade on some early deals to get your feet wet and start to understand how it
Sure.
works and get some reps in. And especially since this will be your first kind of rodeo of running a business, like, yeah, cool. But I love your aspirational attitude and like where you want to go on stuff. So I'm just curious, like there is a risk you get trapped in this business.
Totally. And I've run and been responsible for a lot of things in my past lives and overseen a lot of folks, but I've never run a small business. And so there is a learning curve, and there is a comfort knowing that worst case scenario here, I'll be okay. Let's say I buy this and I find out I'm a horrible operator and I suck at this, at that price, it's not the end of the world to be able to take a second swing, a few years from now. However, I think that's somewhat of that tends not to be the view I take. I tend to be more optimistic and more aggressive. So I think about it more as, why can't I 5X this over the next 5 years? And what would I need to do that? And it's relatively, asset light business, primarily driven on, building a high performing team, a culture, and building a hiring and training process that's elite.
Yeah, I dig it. Well, one, before we move on to our second deal, and we definitely need to talk about whether we like the price of this one or not, the thing I think about with a deal like this is like making sure I really understand like what I'm buying. And to me, what you're buying here that we haven't really talked about is these relationships with the with the established clients, right? And there's the staff as well, but really at its core, if you had to pick one, which is the thing you're really going to keep, you're going to make sure that those vets who have you in their offices and the daycares, they're super happy with you. And so, I think that's a risk here that I would dig in your diligence process. If you were to pursue this one, like understand the state of those relationships, what's contractual, how durable are those things? Because if these are a situation where it's a handshake and the vets can kick you out tomorrow if your employee shows up drunk or whatever, because it will happen, then you have a situation where at least you have some protection and all of the asset value isn't going to just disappear. Because I think that's where I would focus a lot of my attention in the diligence process. So just 2 cents.
Yeah, it's a B to B to C model. Right. In the sense that those partners are my client. So there probably is customer concentration there in some sense, even though the individual end user is an individual customer or a consumer. But yeah, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I love it. Well, what do we think about the price of this business? So it's $945,000 and it makes $340,000, including the salary for the owner who works in the business. On $836,000 in sales. What do we think about that price? I think I heard you, Peter. You think it's good. It's 2.5 times seller discretionary earnings. That's pretty good.
I think it's. I'd probably want to write in. Yeah, I'd be okay with those terms as long as I can control some of the terms of that. Some of those things around partners, around the staff, tying certain language into the contract to ensure that there is protection there. I also would love to see a note here. I would even consider, if they're retiring something like this, 20 years, doing a no SBA and doing an earnout structure to say, here's my growth vision. Here's what I want to do. Let me give you some upside here. And I've done that in the past on LOIs that have gone over relatively well. But yeah, I don't think it's an egregious price. I don't think it's outrageous. I would love to be proven wrong, though, with Mills's next comment.
No, I mean, I think with the level of information that we have, it seems like a realistic price. I'm just reminded of the fact, though, that the deal never looks as good as when you first see it. And so, I think it looks okay at face value right now. Chances are you get into due diligence and you're in the weeds and you're realizing, okay, this went from a great deal to maybe a fair deal. And then, you post close, you're like, oh my gosh, if I knew now, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done X, Y, and Z different. And I think that's just the nature of doing deals. You learn something new every time, whether it's your first or your 15th. But it seems at face value, it seems fairly priced to me.
Yeah. Another lens for me to look at the price of this deal is what is the multiple of, EBITDA on this. And if you add in what you would have to pay for a general manager, let's say all in with benefits and everything is probably low 6 figures, you're really looking at this as probably priced closer to 4.5 times EBITDA, which a little pricey, but
that's high end. Yeah, I think that's a good call out.
Really quick, Michael, the tricky thing with this, and I think it's going to be true of the other business too, is, but it's more so with this, like what would stop you from doing this on your own? If you're good at sales, Peter, which you are, I'm not saying you go poach this guy's customers, but you can kind of do the math in your head and go, okay, for, $500,000, I think I could more than recreate this thing. And if it can be done kind of largely remotely, right? You remotely setting up a team, sales team, and then a fulfillment team, start doing this, 2 states away and see, does it work? And your sunk cost is probably very minimal. I think about kind of the opportunity cost in that way too, with something that's at this end of the size spectrum.
Yeah.
Usually I'm the one in the podcast, by the way, that's like, why would you buy this? Just start it. So I'm glad Mills is doing that for me.
Yeah. And my answer there is I just don't know enough about the industry. Yeah. Or, how regulated this is, what kind of training goes into this, what are those relationships? Are they contractual with all those? I doubt they are very contractual. Yeah. But that's typically how I look at this stuff, especially as we get into like the home services side of things. It's like the first question I ask myself is like, why can't I buy a truck and get a pole
Mhm.
And so we can, maybe that's more relevant for this next topic or this next business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dig it. All right, let's move on to talk about the world's sexiest industry, Radon. So I'll pull this one up, and I am going to read this one. So this is from Biz Buy Sell, aka Buy Biz Sell Mills, the world's greatest marketplace for selling selling or buying a business. And so we pulled it up for those of you on YouTube, and if you're on the podcast itself, we will read it out now. So it is titled Radon, all caps, has a picture of a truck, and the listing is one of Colorado's largest, most trusted and experienced radon services businesses, located in Denver, Colorado, and claims to be relocatable. They are asking $1.75 million for the business. It cash flows $250,000. So $250,000 in cash flow on $1.75 million asking price. So that's a lot. What is that, like 7 times cash flow? That's great. Okay. Gross revenue, they do $3.2 million a year, $10,000 in inventory. EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, $350,000, has $1 million in real estate that does not come with the asking price, $500,000 in furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So it's a bunch of trucks and stuff like that. And it was started in 2011. This is an opportunity to own one of Colorado's largest, most trusted, and experienced residential and commercial radon testing and mitigation businesses. It is 60% residential, 40% commercial. They have 2 other smaller but related businesses operating out of the same facilities and with the same people and equipment, including in the sale of the radon business. What? Okay, so you're getting it's a 3-for-1 deal, guys.
I love how they throw that in there. Oh, by the way, you get 2 more businesses. Don't worry about it.
This is like going to Dairy Queen
Michael,
for dinner. Like they're
click
throwing
on
a Hunger Buster for you.
Click
If
on
you click
that
the PDF,
attached
there's a lot
documents.
more information.
Because
All right,
it's
so
the
let me
last
But I
point
do love
in
how
the
they
bullet
just
point
casually
list.
say there's, yeah. Oh, and by the way, there's 2 other related businesses that, like, what is
By the
that?
way, we're
Is
throwing
there
in 2 other
revenue
businesses
included
for
in
free.
this? You think? I mean, obviously they're saying it's shared staff, so the costs are shared. But is
It
this?
has to be.
Are they actually getting $3.1 million worth of radon business? I wonder if it's like, oh, we also will encapsulate your crawl space, or we'll do, pest control or termite or fix wood rot, like something that's tangential and related. It's got to be, I would think.
Yeah.
All right, let me finish reading the rest of this deal so you understand what we're getting. So the seller founded the business 10 years ago. 20 experienced management and staff operate the business with minimal oversight. They have a reputation for the highest quality installations and customer service in Colorado. Payment due upon completion. I assume they get paid when they do the work, and profitable virtually every year, except when they're not. I added the except when they're not part myself.
I love the virtually every year.
Low OPEX, CAPEX, and working capital requirement, consistent revenue, net income, and free cash flow growth. The owner prefers very controlled growth, meaning I think they've been very conservative, and they have a GM in place now. So potentially this is attractive because you can have somebody run it without buying yourself a job. No dedicated sales team with 100% organic growth, excellent safety record, solid financial control systems in place, and 15 late model vehicles and radon-related equipment come with the deal. Sale includes 2 small but related businesses that we still don't know what they are, but I'm sure they're amazing. So, but they could be this crawl space cleaning, could be anything, Mills. We don't know. Is that what you're thinking? Okay, and then they give us the historical average. The business has been growing 2019, 2020, 21. This seems to be a COVID-proof business. If you have radon testing in your house that needs to be done, I think you really need to do it. The average cash flow per year has been $203,000 over the last 3 years, and the average EBITDA plus sellers' discretionary earnings has been $286,000. So, I wonder what. The first thing that comes to mind, I wonder what is causing the delta between the EBITDA and the free cash flow, given the business does not appear to be owner operated. So that's interesting to me. There's an $80,000 delta a year. I guess that's interest on their trucks and stuff. Maybe. What do we think?
The thing that I love is the no dedicated sales team. When I see that, I don't care what the deal is. I'm going to stop and take a little bit deeper dive just to say how much shit is on this. But I love that. So my first questions there are, what are they doing today? It talks about slow growth. I want to understand the customer journey. I want to understand what's working today, what's not working today, but really want to suss out, is there an opportunity to grow this? Have we hit peak? Is there a reason? Do they even have a culture that would tolerate growth, or to, grow, we need to do a complete clean out half the team? That to me is my first indicator to say, okay, let's dedicate some time to actually learning a little bit more about this business. I don't know enough about Radon. I think it's regulated and required in some states. I don't believe Colorado is one of those. Mills is shaking his head.
Well, it's very interesting geographically. Like, we don't have any radon stuff in South Carolina, and there's not a lot in the Southeast, but it depends on your soil conditions. But I think Colorado is a very big market for it, as far as I understand it, and it is regulated in the service provider has to be regulated, and it's also mandated that you have to get radon checks, I think, with some frequency or regularity. Love those elements about it.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I love the minimal ownership. I love the GM in place. Probably good cash cycle. I think it mentions cash on delivery. Yeah, payment due upon completion. I always get scared, especially lately, when I hear 15 late model trucks. you know, what does that even mean? I've seen businesses. I looked at a landscape business where they had 23 trucks, and not one of them was newer than 2001. And that just terrifies me. I'm not a mechanic, in this environment, that could mean a lot of upcoming capex.
Well, here on the second page, they tell you they will let you buy the real estate for $1 million, which, by the way, I think the pattern I see over and over again is sellers will have somewhat reasonable expectations for the business, and then their real estate sales expectations are just out of control, like way high. So I'd be really curious as you dig, or someone digs into this one, to understand, is the real estate they really have worth $1 million? Which, whatever, who knows? So, I mean, I think the thing that this deal comes down to for me is the price is just extremely high. I'm doing the how long will it take me to get my money back calculation on this. And if they're asking 1.75 million for the business, and it throws off $203,000 on average per year, correct me if my math is wrong, but like, it's going to be like 8 or 9 years until I get all my money back. Like, that doesn't sound very good. Yeah, like, it seems like you should go get a job instead of doing this deal at this price, Peter. What am I doing?
I'm not looking at this deal. I don't. It's weirdly marketed. Like, what is EBITDA plus SDE? I've never seen that. Is that just SDE? Is that and as well as there's confusion around, is the real estate included in the certain things? Is it not? But at face value, yeah, I'm seeing what you're seeing, which is $203,000 in free cash flow on $1.75 million asking price is fairly heavy.
Yeah, you should be cleaning dog teeth over this thing.
What I love to do in a situation like this is go back to them and show them. I think the last time I said this, I was screaming it, but it doesn't pencil. The deal doesn't pencil, right? If you have to borrow the money required that they're saying this business is worth with the real estate on a 10-year AM, it's $360,000 a year in debt service. So it just doesn't work. It doesn't get anywhere close to working. And so it's a red flag in my mind that you have a guy who is a real estate broker who is also selling businesses. Those usually do not, they don't end well. They might kind of start okay, but in my experience, they don't end well. But maybe this is a guy that you could talk to and say, "Hey, is the seller dictating the price here, or do we have some room to have a conversation?" Because it really probably doesn't pencil that well either if it's just the business and then you're renting back the real estate, because chances are, and you never know, but is rent actually a real expense line item for this business right now? how are the sellers treating it if it's owned separately or owned, by this exact corporate entity? But it just doesn't pencil. It's the craziest thing. But I love being able to go back and show, no matter what, no matter who buys this thing, no matter what their capital structure is, they will not be able to borrow any money to do it because no lender will actually provide it.
Yeah, I always love finding out, how did you come to this conclusion? How did you come to this? Talk me through how you valued this. And then let's confirm assumptions because, I have a lot of questions as well. I mean, even on I was just going to say the real estate's $1 million, the business price is, so I guess that'd be blended at like 17 years. It's not more than 50%, but still, yeah.
It's interesting. There's two possibilities here. One, either you have an unreasonable seller, or you have an unreasonable, doofus broker who is either unreasonable and doofus, or the broker has decided to get the listing. They're making wild promises to the seller, which is one of the things I think we hate on this podcast more than anything is brokers that do that, just waste everybody's time on the buyer side. And it also wastes the seller's time. It's just disingenuous. Not all listings are good listings to have if you're a business broker or a real estate agent. So, I think it's interesting maybe to dig in and understand where who's the problem here. And, sometimes if it's the seller, then you can get paid sometimes by just, as one of my colleagues calls it, hanging around the hoop, looking for a rebound for when the seller gets reasonable. But otherwise, yeah, it's just like double click, look at the next deal. This one's not a way to, to make any money from your investing.
I was just going to say, pricing aside, I don't know enough about how somebody chooses to purchase radon mitigation services. Is there a certain point in time where the majority of this business comes, such as new construction? Do they get fed a lot of customers through real estate agents? I don't think most people are sitting around just saying, "Oh, let's do the windows next year. We want a new kitchen island," and oh honey, we got to do the radon mitigation system. So I don't know enough about that customer journey to understand where the optimization would come from a sales side of things. So that'd be something I'd want to dive in much deeper on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just Googled, do I have to get a radon inspection when I buy a house? And of all of the radon inspection companies say you have to. So there you go.
It must be true. Yeah. So then I would go ahead and, start building relationships with real estate agents and, home builders and, yeah.
Well, they do it. It sounds like they do installation of radon monitoring systems. I wonder if they do if there is a way to do radon remediation, because this is a gas. Radon, I looked it up. So is a gas that comes from soil that is heavy in uranium. So there's a lot of uranium in your soil. You can get radon in your house, and it's odorless, tasteless, invisible, and causes lung cancer. It's the 5th leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. So it's not good. So I bet these guys, at least looking at these trucks, they do more than just walk in and do testing and that sort of thing. There's some sort of remediation here going on as well.
Yeah. And I think a breakdown of service, a breakdown of revenue by service would probably be the thing I'd be most interested to see here. Putting the price to the side.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness they have the price listed, so you
I don't have to ask that question.
Invest any time in this deal at all. For me, this is a double click, move on.
There's a phenomenon that's present here too, where this is an industry that's been highly consolidated, and a lot of that has been PE backed, and much like pest control and some other home service related trades that have some similar gross margin characteristics. And so you almost have to ask yourself, when you see this type of business for sale, why hasn't it sold to a consolidator or to a private equity backed strategy? And there, first answer is there's probably a reason why. And then also the inverse is they're waiting, right, for somebody like that to come along and pay this type of price, because I don't think that type of multiple is outlandish if that's your buyer, but there's no owner operator who can make those numbers work. And so it's a little bit of a catch-22 when you look at these, because they're anchoring at what, they heard somebody who's doing $1 million or $2 million in EBITDA in this industry is getting. And you're like, yes, but that's not you. You can't get that.
Yeah. I mean, even like looking at the quality of the revenue, this seems, and again, I don't know enough here, but if I do my job well, that should be the last time you see me. So that makes it even more challenging to pencil a 7 or 8x multiple that they're asking. I can't imagine that this is a service that you would do more than once every 15 years.
Yep.
But what do I know about Radon? I'm into teeth cleaning of dogs. That's my thing.
Hell yeah. Well, at least I have this belief that you got to look at a lot of deals to know when you run across one really good, and when you look at a total turd like this one, then you can realize like brushing Fido's teeth is maybe not the worst outcome. So there you go. So we are out of time. You've been amazing, Peter. Thank you for doing this. In closing, we want this podcast experience to be a real benefit for you. And thanks for giving your time and insight into all this stuff, and your lens as, sales background person has been awesome. What ways can we or our audience do to help you and support you kind of in the things that you're working on these days?
Yeah. Probably best place to reach me is Twitter at Peter Wirt, PeterWirt. Reach out. I love connecting with folks on Twitter. I love just talking about this stuff. That's me, not the one with 6 followers. I don't know who that
We're going to edit that part out, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy was, but I believe I'm the only Peter Wirtshafter in the world, so it's probably something I should know about. But yeah, whether or not you're an operator looking to talk about growth strategies for your business, if you're a searcher who is looking at just talking through diligence or sales in the company you're looking at, or just want a shoulder to cry on in a very dark and lonely period of your life, or and anyone, I just please reach out. Love helping any way I can. Other than that. I mentioned my company, Sunbeam Growth Advisory, but the best way to probably reach out about that is simply through Twitter.
Right on. Thanks, man.
This has been fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us, Peter.